do they hold on to films and hope to be able to release them competitively after the pandemic, whenever that may be, or do they flip them, sell them on to streamers or broadcasters and take the money and run?
The distribution business been incredibly hard hit. Cinema's been shut almost all around the world, only just starting to open up in some territories. You work with independent distributors worldwide. How much are they suffering? And do you think we're coming out of it now, or do you think this is going to be a fundamental, I don't know, transformative moment for the independent distribution industry? Do you think things are going to not look the same once we emerge from the pandemic?
Well, it has been a tremendously difficult period for independent distributors internationally. There's no doubt about that. The inability to release their films creates all sorts of challenges, not just for them in the immediate term from a cash flow perspective and a business perspective, but then also the logjam that it creates, and throwing up the dilemma: do they hold on to films and hope to be able to release them competitively after the pandemic, whenever that may be, or do they flip them, sell them on to streamers or broadcasters and take the money and run? So I think those challenges have been relatively uniform everywhere I speak to people. The solutions have been different from place to place, but definitely a hugely challenging year for them. And I think perhaps it's been a period where changes that were already very much afoot in the international industry have been accelerated and may well lead to, a new normal as we come out of the pandemic, back to whatever the new normal actually looks like, which I think is a universe where the pipeline of films, which was already interrupted pre-pandemic by the appetite of the streamers, largely to the detriment of the independent distributors. Those pipeline issues obviously came to a head during the pandemic. Coming out of the pandemic, there will continue to be a reduced pipeline, and I think the reality that pipeline is going to stay at lower levels than previously is clearly going to be impactful on the number of companies looking to acquire and release films theatrically, and it will be impactful on the number of films those companies are able or intend to release. So there's some seismic changes going to come about because of that. I think the other big changes that are less easy to read at the moment, but clearly there's just an awful lot of evolution, is how those distributors are able to generate a business model on a film. What is their level of marketing expenditure on the theatrical release? What additional value does that theatrical release create for a film in territory? How are they able to monetize that film downstream after the theatrical release, which really is boiling down increasingly to what will streamers pay for a film that's coming out of a theatrical run as opposed to licensing directly? And depending on the state of the streamer universe in any given territory, depending on the state of the theatrical business and the potential for the theatrical business to bounce back in any territory, these are the key economic issues that everybody's going to be grappling with over the next year or two, I think.
And so do you think, just what I hear you saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that you expect a fair amount of consolidation to happen, companies probably to go under or to form together to survive? What do you think the big independents can survive, or is it going to become a matter of having much smaller sort of niche distributors or specialty distributors where you can make a little bit of money on theatrical and get the rest back on SVOD? Because the big companies that take these big risks on films like Moonfall, for example, will they be able to, what business model have you seen that still works for these big independents worldwide?
So I think the simplest answer to that question is diversification will be the key. Diversification of people's businesses. I'm actually quite optimistic that mainstream commercial theatrical distribution will remain a really viable business model for independents. I do think there will be, in any given territory, a smaller circle of those companies competing for a smaller pipeline of films, but there will be films. And we can come on to why there will be films available to that sector of the marketplace in a second. But there will be big commercial films for them to release and for them to be competitive with at the box office. But there will be some consolidation amongst companies. And then, again, going back to this idea of the pandemic era accelerating trends that were already very much afoot, many of these companies have focused significantly on building their own local production activity, either to create their own pipeline or even to sell films to streamers themselves and generate much needed cash flow and brand equity or sometimes leverage when it comes to licensing their other films. And many of these companies have also expanded into television production, which is obviously booming pretty much everywhere, certainly in Europe. So the shape of these businesses is shifting, and it's shifting from the model of maybe the last 20 years, which were companies who either bought films to release them theatrically or bought films to release them on home entertainment, and that was essentially their core business with some limited production activity, to, I think, slightly more rounded film production, television production, and theatrical releasing businesses. I'm seeing, even talking to long-established companies, old partners, old friends, even here this week, I'm hearing them describe the focus of their businesses now, and you can see that shift happening quite quickly.